My name is Elara Whitmore, and on a night when it was 3 degrees in Milwaukee, my mother-in-law locked my 8-year-old son and me outside on a balcony in our pajamas and called it discipline. 38 minutes later, police were at her door for something far darker than what she did to us. By the end of that year, a jury would call it homicide, a judge would call it cruelty, and I would learn that some people don't use cold weather to teach lessons, they use fear to control. Chapter 1. The Night the Cold Turned Real. The night the cold turned real, it was 3 degrees outside, and my mother-in-law decided my 8-year-old son needed to learn respect. Milwaukee winters are not gentle. The wind off Lake Michigan doesn't just chill you, it finds the seams in your coat, the thin places in your patience. By February 17, 2024, I was used to the cold outside. I was not prepared for it inside our home. We were living in my mother-in-law Samantha Hayes' condo on the south side, a beige 2-bedroom unit that always felt slightly dimmer than it should. Daniel said it was temporary. He had taken a new interstate freight route that kept him on the road between Wisconsin and Texas most weeks, and staying with his mom would help us save for a down payment. It made sense on paper. On paper, a lot of things make sense. I am 37, an ER nurse at Aurora Medical Center. I work 12-hour shifts where I make decisions fast and steady, where panic wastes time. I have seen frostbite, hyperthermia, shock. I know what cold can do to a body. Our son Noah is 8, small for his age, but sturdy, 3rd grade at Hawthorne Elementary. He loves math and hates green beans. He laughs too loud when he forgets himself. He still climbs into my bed when Daniel is on the road. Samantha is 62 and has built her identity around 2 things: discipline and church. At Grace Fellowship, she is known as firm but fair, a woman who raised a son on her own after her husband left, and who believes children thrive on structure. People nod when she talks about standards. They do not see what those standards look like at home. The thermostat in the condo is always set lower than I would choose, 64 in winter, 65 if she is feeling generous. When I nudged it up once after coming home from a night shift, she turned it back down and said, "Cold builds character." She smiled when she said it, like it was wisdom passed down through generations instead of an opinion no one asked for. She had already tested Noah in small ways. One afternoon in January, when he talked back about homework, she made him stand out on the small front landing in his socks for 5 minutes to think. It was 30 degrees that day. I watched from the doorway, my jaw tight, while she folded her arms and told me, he needs to understand consequences. I told Daniel that night on the phone that it bothered me. He was somewhere in Oklahoma, tired, voice crackling through the truck cab. He said, "That's just how she is, Elara. She doesn't mean anything by it. She raised me that way and I turned out fine." I did not argue then. I should have. That Sunday evening in February, the wind rattled the sliding glass door that led to the balcony. The sky had gone dark early. I had just finished 3 night shifts in a row and was running on caffeine and habit. Daniel was in Amarillo, due back in 2 days. Dinner was simple: baked chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans. Samantha plated everything with precision, as if presentation mattered more than appetite. Noah picked at the green beans, pushing them to the side of his plate with the edge of his fork. "Eat your vegetables," Samantha said without looking up. "I don't like them," Noah said softly. "You don't have to like them. You have to eat them." He took 1 bite and swallowed with effort. I could see his shoulders tense. I know that look. He is not being defiant. He is trying. "He's had enough," I said. "He ate his chicken. That's fine." Samantha's eyes lifted slowly. "In my house, respect matters. He will finish what is on his plate." "He's full," I said, keeping my voice level. "He's 8, not enlisted." The air shifted. I felt it the way I feel a monitor change tone before anyone else notices. "You undermine me in my own home," she said, leaning slightly toward me. "You make him weak." I felt heat rise in my chest. "He is not weak. He's a child." She reached across the table and scooped up a forkful of green beans, pushing them toward Noah's mouth. "Opened," she said. Noah shook his head, eyes wide. His lower lip trembled. "Stop," I said, sharper now. "Don't force him." Samantha's jaw tightened. She set the fork down with exaggerated calm. "You think you know better than me because you work at a hospital. You see a little pain and you panic. This isn't about pain, it's about control." Her chair scraped back against the tile. She stood, tall, rigid. "If you cannot show respect, then perhaps you both need time to cool off." Before I fully understood what she meant, she walked to the sliding glass door and yanked it open. A blade of freezing air sliced into the dining room. Noah flinched. "Come here," she said to him. Noah looked at me. "Stay where you are," I told him. Samantha moved faster than I expected for someone her age. She grabbed Noah by the upper arm and guided, almost shoved him toward the balcony. It happened in seconds. His socked feet slipped slightly on the tile as she pushed him over the threshold. "What are you doing?" I demanded, already rising from my chair. "He needs a moment. Fresh air clears the mind." "It's 3 degrees outside," I said. "He won't be out long." I was already moving. My body doesn't wait for permission when my child is involved. I stepped onto the balcony after Noah. The concrete was dusted with snow, thin and hard. The wind hit my face so sharply my eyes watered. Noah turned toward the door immediately. "Mom!" I reached for him, pulling him close against me. He was wearing pajama pants and a long-sleeved shirt, no coat, no shoes, just thin cotton and socks. Samantha stood in the doorway for one suspended second. Her face was composed, almost serene. "Maybe now you'll learn respect." The door slid shut. The sound was small, a smooth glide of glass on track, then the click of the latch. I stared at her through the glass. "Open the door, Samantha," my breath already coming out in white bursts. She didn't move. "Open the door, Samantha." She shook her head once, slow, deliberate. "You will not speak to me in my house." My pulse pounded in my ears. I tried the handle. It did not budge. "This is not discipline," I said, my voice rising despite myself. "This is dangerous." Inside, she crossed her arms. I saw her mouth move but couldn't hear the words through the glass. I didn't need to. The message was clear. This was a lesson. Noah's fingers were already cold against my skin. He pressed his face into my side. "Mom, it's cold." "I know, baby, I know." I banged on the glass with the heel of my hand. Samantha turned away. That was the moment something in me shifted, not in panic, into clarity. This was not a temper flare, not a grandmother being overly strict, not a misunderstanding that would dissolve once everyone calmed down. This was control with a purpose, a demonstration. The wind cut across the balcony, and I tightened my arms around my son as the cold began to seep through cotton and bone.
If this story touched you, please subscribe and let someone out there feel less alone. Thank you.
Chapter 2. 38 Minutes at 3 degrees F. The air felt alive, sharp and relentless, pushing through the thin fabric of Noah's pajamas like it had somewhere important to be. I pulled him tighter against me, turning my back to the wind to shield him as best I could. The balcony was narrow, concrete under a thin crust of snow, metal railing rimmed with frost. 3 floors up, no stairs down from here, no way around the locked glass. "Stay with me," I said into his hair. "Talk to me." He was already shaking hard, not the dramatic shiver people think of, but the fast, uncontrolled tremor that starts deep in the muscles. His lips had gone pale at the edges. "Mom, it hurts." I know. We're going to keep moving." I stamped my feet, trying to create friction, and guided him to do the same. His socks slid slightly on the frozen surface. I tugged open the neckline of my sweatshirt and shoved his small hands inside against my stomach, pressing them flat against my skin. "Put your hands here. Keep them here." The wind came in waves, whipping around the corner of the building. I glanced through the glass. Samantha was no longer standing there. The living room lights were still on. The television flickered in the background. I banged once on the door with my fist. "Open it!" No movement. I felt my nurse brain split from my mother brain. One part of me wanted to scream until my throat tore. The other part started counting. 3 degrees, wind chill lower, 8-year-old body mass, cotton fabric, exposed skin minimal but not protected. Hypothermia risk increases rapidly in these conditions. How long has it been? It felt like 10 minutes. It had probably been less than 2. "Noah, I need you to do something for me." He nodded, teeth chattering so hard his words bumped against each other. "Say the alphabet backwards." He blinked at me. "Why?" "Because it's hard and I need you thinking." He squinted, trying to focus. Z, Y, X, W. Good. Keep going. His voice wavered. His head tipped slightly toward my chest. "Don't lean. Stand up straight. Keep your eyes open. Talk to me." "Mom, I'm tired." The word tired shot through me like a warning siren. People don't understand that cold makes you sleepy. It whispers that rest would be easier. "You do not get to sleep," I said, firmer now. "Look at me." His eyes struggled to hold mine. I cupped his face with my right hand, my left already beginning to burn in a strange way, as if tiny needles were pressing into the skin. "What did you do at school on Friday?" "We had math. Fractions. I got a star." "That's right, you did. Tell me about the problem you got wrong." He talked in short bursts. His breath came out in uneven clouds. I kept him talking about anything, his teacher, his friend Mateo, the book he was reading. Another gust of wind tore across the balcony, and I felt it cut through my sweatshirt. My own fingers were starting to stiffen. My ears throbbed. I tried the handle again. Nothing. I looked through the glass once more. Samantha walked past in the background, calm, carrying a dish towel as if she were cleaning up dinner. Rage surged up my spine. "Open the door!" I shouted, louder now. She did not turn. I glanced over the railing, down into the small parking lot below. A few cars, snow blowing sideways in thin streaks, a single balcony light across the courtyard. "Help!" I yelled. "Please!" The wind swallowed half the word. Noah sagged slightly against me. "Stand up," I said quickly. "Stomp your feet." He tried. His socks were damp now at the bottom. His legs shook. "Mom?" "I am here. You are not alone." Time felt distorted. I needed something external, something real. I leaned out slightly and waved both arms. "Help!" A curtain across the way shifted. A woman in a robe stepped onto her balcony, squinting against the wind. "Are you okay?" she called. "We're locked out. Please call 911. Her posture changed immediately. She disappeared inside. Relief hit me so hard, my knees nearly buckled. Help was coming. It had to be. Noah's head tipped again. "Look at me," I said, lifting his chin gently. "What's 8 times 7? 56. Good. 9 times 6. He hesitated. 54. That's my boy. His voice was slower now. "Mom, I'm really tired." I pressed my forehead to his. "Stay awake. Just a little longer." A part of my mind began calculating how hard the glass would be to break. Sliding doors are tempered. They shatter into pebbles. I could use my elbow or the metal chair in the corner. If I broke it, Samantha could press charges. Property damage, trespassing, domestic dispute turned ugly. Would a prosecutor care that it was 3 degrees? Probably. Would Samantha spin it? Absolutely. If Noah stopped answering me, I would break it. That line formed clearly in my head. If he stopped talking, I would not hesitate. Sirens cut through the wind, faint at first, then growing louder. Red and blue lights flickered against the snow below. "We're almost there," I whispered. 2 patrol cars pulled into the lot. Officer Grant stepped out first, scanning upward. Officer Park followed behind, her breath visible in quick bursts as she looked up toward us. "Up here!" I called. They spotted us immediately. Officer Park pointed at the balcony, then at the ground near the building entrance. Officer Miller shouted, "Can you get back inside?" "The door is locked. My mother-in-law locked us out." They moved fast. Officer Miller ran toward the building entrance. Officer Park stayed in the lot, eyes fixed on Noah. "Stay with me, buddy," she called up. Noah's head lifted slightly at the sound of another adult voice. I heard pounding inside, muffled through the walls. A heavy knock. Voices. The curtain shifted. Samantha appeared at the glass, irritation etched into her features. She slid the door open a few inches, letting a blade of warmth cut across my face. "What is this nonsense?" she snapped. "Get inside," Officer Park shouted. I guided Noah first over the threshold. The moment his feet hit the carpet, he stumbled, legs buckling. I caught him before he hit the floor and pulled him toward the couch. "Blankets," I said automatically. Officer Miller stepped in behind us. "What happened here?" "They stepped outside to cool off," Samantha said sharply. "It was only a minute." Officer Park moved past her and out onto the balcony. She crouched, studying the snow. "There are sock prints out here," she said. Samantha rolled her eyes. "Children exaggerate." Noah was sobbing now, deep, ragged cries that seemed to come from somewhere below language. I wrapped a blanket around him, rubbing his arms briskly. "Paramedics are on the way," Officer Miller said quietly to me. "Mild hypothermia," one of them said quietly to me. "You're going to need that checked," the paramedic said. I nodded, but my eyes were on Noah. Across the room, Officer Miller's posture changed subtly. He had stepped back from the others, radio pressed to his shoulder. He was very still. Then he looked up at Samantha. "Ma'am, please sit down." She frowned. "For what?" "Please sit down." There was a beat of silence that felt heavier than the wind outside. Officer Miller spoke into his radio again, low but clear enough that I caught fragments. "Confirming active warrant. Yes, same name, same date of birth." Samantha's expression shifted, confusion edging into something sharper. "This is absurd. I have done nothing wrong." Officer Miller's tone was different now, official. "Ma'am, you are not free to leave. Additional units are en route." Noah clung to me as the paramedics guided us toward the ambulance. My left hand throbbed dully, numb and burning at the same time. As they closed the ambulance doors, I heard Officer Miller's radio crackle again. "Cold case unit notified. They're on their way." I held my son against my chest, feeling the warmth slowly returning to his skin. And for the first time that night, I realized the cold was not the only thing about to surface.
If this story touched you, please subscribe and let someone out there feel less alone. Thank you.
Chapter 3. What was buried in 2016? The sirens outside did not fade after the ambulance doors closed. They multiplied. Through the small back window, I saw 2 unmarked vehicles pull into the lot behind the patrol cars. The paramedic across from me was focused on Noah's vitals, adjusting the heated blanket around his shoulders, speaking in a calm, steady tone about breathing and circulation. I was nodding, answering questions automatically, but my attention kept drifting back to the flashing red and blue lights reflecting off the snow. Noah's temperature was low, but stabilizing. He was shivering less now, eyelids heavy but responsive. I kept one arm wrapped around him while the other hand rested awkwardly in my lap. My left pinky had begun to throb with a deep, pulsing ache beneath the numbness. "We're going to transport him to Aurora just to monitor," the paramedic said. "I work there," I replied. He gave a brief nod. "Then you know the drill." I did. Warm slowly, watch for cardiac irregularities, avoid rapid rewarming of extremities, prevent afterdrop. My brain filed it all away, even as my heart pounded against my ribs. The ambulance doors opened again. Officer Grant Miller stepped up, his face more serious now than it had been minutes earlier. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "detectives are here." "For what?" He hesitated, as if measuring how much to say in front of my son. "They have an active warrant for Samantha Hayes." The words landed oddly, as if they belonged to someone else's life. "For tonight?" I asked. "No," he said, "not for tonight." Behind him, two figures approached through the swirling wind, a tall man in a dark wool coat and a woman beside him with her hair pulled back tight under a knit cap. They moved with purpose, not urgency, which somehow made it more unsettling. Detective Aaron Wolf introduced himself first. His voice was controlled, steady. Detective Marisol Vega stood slightly behind him, eyes sharp, taking in everything. "Mrs. Whitmore," Wolf said, "I'm sorry about what happened tonight. We need to speak with you briefly before you leave." Noah stirred against me. I kissed the top of his head. "Can it wait until he's settled?" I asked. "It won't take long." The paramedic stepped down from the ambulance to give us space. Cold air rushed in again. I tightened my hold on Noah. Detective Wolf looked at me carefully. "Do you know where Samantha Hayes was employed in 2016? The year snagged in my mind. "She worked at a daycare," I said slowly, "years ago." "Little Pines Learning Center," he said. "In January 2016, a 5-year-old girl named Madison Price died there." The world seemed to tilt slightly, not from dizziness, but from sudden expansion, information rushing in too fast. Died how? "Locked in an unheated maintenance room for approximately 3 hours, Detective Vega answered. "Officially ruled an accident at the time." Officially? Detective Wolf continued. "We reopened the case in September of 2023. New information surfaced during a review of archived records tied to the facility." "What kind of information?" "The daycare upgraded their systems before closing in 2018. Their original server had been stored off-site by a third-party data company. Last November, when those records were being liquidated, archived footage was recovered, footage that had not been reviewed during the initial investigation." I stared at him. "You're saying there's video?" "Yes." Noah shifted, murmuring something intelligible. I stroked his hair automatically. "The footage shows Samantha Hayes escorting Madison Price down a hallway toward the maintenance room, shortly before the child was reported missing," Wolf said. "The door was closed behind them. The child was not seen leaving." The wind rattled the ambulance slightly. I felt very still inside. "We secured a warrant in early February," Wolf went on. "We have been confirming her current residence. When Officer Miller ran her identification tonight, the system flagged the active warrant. This incident helped us confirm location, but the warrant was already in place." "So this wasn't because of what she did to my son?" "No. That is a separate matter. It will be documented and added to the record." The clarity of that answer cut deeper than anything else. "What happens now?" I asked. "She will be taken into custody tonight on charges related to the 2016 case. We will also coordinate with the district attorney regarding tonight's events." Through the open doors, I could see movement inside the condo, officers escorting Samantha toward the hallway. She was no longer composed. Her posture was rigid, chin lifted too high. "I need to see this," I said before I could stop myself. The paramedic hesitated. "You should stay warm." "I'll be quick." He helped Noah settle back against the stretcher, adjusting the blankets around him. "Stay with me, buddy." Noah's eyes fluttered open briefly. "Mom." "I'm right here." I stepped down onto the frozen pavement. The cold hit me again, but felt distant now compared to the storm inside my chest.
Samantha stood in the living room with Detective Vega on one side and Officer Miller on the other. Her wrists were held behind her. The metal cuffs caught the overhead light. "This is ridiculous," she said sharply. "That girl's death was an accident." Detective Wolf's voice was even. "A judge reviewed the evidence and signed a warrant, Miss Hayes." She spotted me in the doorway. Her eyes locked onto mine with a ferocity that almost made me step back. "You did this," she said.
For a second, the old instinct flickered, the one that wondered if I had somehow caused everything by speaking up, by calling out her control. "No," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "You did." Her mouth twisted. "You have always been dramatic." Behind her, Officer Park was documenting the room with her body camera. The television was still on, a sitcom laugh track echoing absurdly in the background. Detective Vega stepped closer to Samantha. "You are being placed under arrest in connection with the death of Madison Price. You have the right to remain silent." Samantha tried to pull her hands away, but the cuffs held firm. "This is a mistake," she insisted. Detective Wolf did not argue. He simply repeated her rights and guided her toward the door. As they led her past me, she leaned slightly in my direction. "You will regret this," she hissed. I looked at her hands secured behind her back. I thought about the way she had closed that door with deliberate calm. "I regret trusting you," I said quietly. She was walked out into the night, flashing lights bouncing off the snow and the condo walls. Neighbors had begun to gather at their windows. Curtains shifted. Faces appeared. The paramedics urged me back toward the ambulance. My left hand was no longer just numb. It felt heavy, thick, as if it belonged to someone else. Inside, they examined my fingers more closely. The tip of my pinky was pale, almost gray. "We need to get you evaluated as well," one of them said. "That looks like a deeper injury." Noah reached for my uninjured hand. "Are we going home?" he asked. "Not tonight." "Where's Grandma?" "She's going somewhere else for a while." He didn't ask more. The ambulance doors closed again. As we pulled away from the condo, I watched through the back window as Samantha was guided into the back of a police vehicle. The red and blue lights painted her face in alternating colors. My phone vibrated in my pocket. "Daniel." I answered on the second ring. "What happened?" he demanded, his voice already tight. "I just got a call from Mom." "She locked us outside," I said. Silence. "In 3-degree weather." "She wouldn't." "She did." Another silence, heavier now. "The police are here," I continued. "Detectives. There's a warrant from a case in 2016. A little girl died at the daycare where she worked." "What are you talking about?" "They have video, Daniel. They reopened it last fall." "That doesn't make sense." "It makes more sense than what happened tonight." His breathing was audible through the line. "You're overreacting. She would never hurt a child." I closed my eyes briefly. "She hurt ours." The words hung between us. "Where are you?" he asked finally. "On the way to Aurora. Noah has mild hypothermia. I might have frostbite." His voice shifted then, panic cutting through denial. "Is he okay?" "He will be." "And Mom?" "She's under arrest." There was no immediate response, just the hum of highway noise on his end. "Elara," he said after a long moment. "She raised me." "I know." He exhaled slowly. "I need to think." "So do I." We ended the call without saying anything else. At the hospital, they moved Noah into a treatment room quickly. Warm blankets, heated air, monitors. His temperature climbed slowly back toward normal. The doctor assured me there would likely be no lasting damage. When they examined my hand, the attending physician frowned slightly. "This may be grade 3 frostbite," he said. "We'll know more in a few days. Sometimes the tissue declares itself later." I nodded. I had said the same words to patients before. Hours later, after statements were taken and vitals stabilized, I stepped outside the ER entrance briefly for air.
The night was still bitter, but it no longer felt like an enemy. A patrol car rolled slowly past the hospital entrance. I wondered where Samantha was now. Processing, fingerprints, a holding cell? 8 years ago, a 5-year-old girl named Madison Price had stood somewhere in that daycare hallway. I imagined a small hand against a closed door. I imagined someone turning away. The wind tugged at my hair. I wrapped my coat tighter around myself and looked up at the dark Milwaukee sky. The cold had started on our balcony, but it had begun long before that.
If this story touched you, please subscribe and let someone out there feel less alone. Thank you.
Chapter 4. After the door closed. The condo felt different the next morning, even though we were no longer inside it. We stayed that first night in a spare room at my colleague Jenna's apartment near the hospital. Noah slept beside me on the narrow bed, wrapped in 2 blankets despite the thermostat being set at 70. Every time the radiator clicked or the bathroom doors shifted in the hallway, he jerked awake. Around 3 in the morning, the sliding sound of someone opening a balcony door in the unit above us scraped through the walls. Noah bolted upright. His hands flew to my arm. "It's okay," I whispered immediately. He was breathing too fast. "They're not locking us out." He stared at me, eyes wide and glossy in the dark. "Was I bad?" he asked. The question settled into my chest like a stone. "No," I said without hesitation. "You were not bad." He swallowed. "She said I was disrespectful." I cupped his face in my palm, careful with my injured hand. "You're allowed to say you're full. That's not disrespect. That's your body." He looked at me as if I were translating a language he had just learned. He didn't sleep deeply again until the sun began to rise. By the end of that week, I had arranged for him to see a child therapist. Play therapy, 6 months minimum, the intake specialist recommended. The words sounded clinical, almost distant, but when I watched Noah push toy figures into a dollhouse freezer during his first session, I knew we were only at the surface of what the cold had left behind. He startled at the sound of sliding doors. He hesitated before stepping outside, even bundled in layers. Once, when a gust of wind hit his face walking into school, he flinched and grabbed my hand. Daniel came home 2 days after the arrest. He stood in Jenna's doorway looking older than he had the week before. He hugged Noah first, long and tight. "You scared me, buddy," he said softly. Noah pressed his face into Daniel's jacket. "I was cold," he said simply. Daniel's eyes flicked to me. That night, after Noah fell asleep on the couch, Daniel and I sat across from each other at the small kitchen table. "They showed me the footage," he said. Detective Wolf had arranged it. Daniel had insisted on seeing it himself. "It's grainy. Hallway camera. You can't hear anything." I waited. She takes the girl's hand, Madison, walks her down the hall, opens the maintenance room door. His throat worked. She looks back once, then she closes it. Silence stretched between us. "I thought there was a line," he said finally. "I always thought she had a line." The words echoed what he had told me in Oklahoma weeks ago. "She doesn't mean anything by it." "I was wrong," he added. It was the first time he had said that about her. I felt something shift, not relief, not yet, but a crack in the wall he had built around his loyalty. A week later, I met Cynthia Price for coffee. Detective Vega had asked if I would be willing. Cynthia wanted to meet the woman whose child had been locked out in the cold. She looked younger than I expected, early 40s, with a careful posture like someone bracing against an invisible weight. "I'm sorry about your son," she said as soon as we sat down. "I'm sorry about your daughter," I replied. We did not pretend to exchange small talk. They told me it was an accident in 2016, that Madison wandered off, that no one saw. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup without drinking. But I always felt something wasn't right.
Samantha told me Madison needed discipline. She said my daughter was dramatic. My stomach tightened. She used to say fear teaches faster, like it was some kind of parenting philosophy. The phrase slid into place with sickening familiarity. Cold builds character. Respect matters. Fear teaches faster. Different words, same control. When they reopened the case last fall, they called me in. They showed me the footage. I watched her lead my daughter down that hallway. Her voice did not break. It hardened. She never looked panicked. She looked certain. I thought about the balcony, about the way Samantha had stood inside, arms folded. "I'm glad you were there for your son," Cynthia said quietly. "I wasn't there for mine." "You didn't fail her," I said. "She did." Cynthia nodded once, but grief does not move that easily. March came with court dates. The protective order hearing was brief but heavy. Samantha appeared on a video screen from the county jail. She wore a gray uniform and an expression that hovered somewhere between indignation and disbelief. The judge reviewed the police report from February 17th, the medical records documenting Noah's mild hypothermia and my frostbite. "Ms. Hayes, do you dispute that you locked your grandson and daughter-in-law on the balcony in freezing weather?" Samantha lifted her chin. "I was teaching discipline." The words echoed in the courtroom. Daniel sat beside me, jaw tight. The judge signed the temporary protective order without hesitation. Samantha would have no contact with Noah or me pending trial. Outside the courthouse, Daniel exhaled slowly. "She still doesn't think she did anything wrong," he said. "No, she doesn't." Back at Aurora Medical Center, I met with Todd Klein from HR. He closed the office door gently behind us. "We're aware of the situation. There may be media coverage once charges are filed publicly. I understand. We just need to make sure patient confidentiality is maintained and that you're comfortable continuing your shifts." "I am." He studied me for a moment. "If you need time, take it. No one here thinks you did anything wrong." When I returned to the ER floor that night, 2 of my colleagues hugged me without saying much. In medicine, we understand shock without needing explanation. At home, Daniel moved quietly through the apartment we had rented after leaving the condo. He cooked dinner, he picked Noah up from school, he drove him to therapy. But something hung between us. One evening, as Noah worked on homework at the kitchen table, Daniel turned to me. "I talked to her," he said. "When?" "Yesterday, at the jail." My stomach tightened. "And?" "She said you overreacted. She said kids need consequences. She said she was building character." I let out a slow breath. "And what did you say?" He looked down at his hands. "I asked her if she remembered Madison's name." Silence filled the room. "She said the media was exaggerating, that it was a tragic mistake." Daniel's voice cracked for the first time. "She didn't ask about Noah, not once." That landed heavier than anything else. He met my eyes. "I can't defend that." There it was, the choice forming. That night, as Noah slept in his own bed in our small rental, Daniel stood in the doorway of the bedroom for a long time, watching him breathe. When he finally came back into the living room, he sat beside me on the couch. "I need to know," he said quietly, "if this goes to trial, if it gets ugly, are you prepared for that?" "Yes." He nodded slowly. "Then I need to decide where I stand." I didn't answer, because I knew this was not just about a courtroom. It was about whether he would keep trying to protect the image of his mother or finally protect his son. He stared at the wall for a long moment. "I thought there was a line," he repeated softly, and this time he did not sound certain where it had ever been.
If this story touched you, please subscribe and let someone out there feel less alone. Thank you.
Chapter 5. The Courtroom. October arrived colder than it should have, the kind of early chill that seeps into courthouse marble and settles there. Milwaukee County Circuit Court did not feel dramatic from the outside. It was a square building of stone and glass, people moving in and out with folders tucked under their arms, coffee cups in hand. Inside, though, The air felt charged, not loud, not chaotic, just heavy with consequence. Daniel walked beside me through security. He had shaved that morning, wore a dark suit he had not put on since a cousin's wedding. He held the door open for me without speaking. Noah was not there. He was at school, and later that afternoon he would go to therapy. We had decided together that he would not sit in a courtroom and listen to strangers dissect the worst night of his life. Samantha sat at the defense table in a pale sweater, hair neatly styled. She looked smaller in that chair than she had in the condo, but not diminished. If anything, she looked indignant. ADA Kimberly Tran stood when we entered, offering a small nod. Her presence was steady, measured. She did not radiate outrage. She radiated preparation. The charges were read aloud. Child endangerment in connection with the February 17th incident, homicide related to the January 2016 death of Madison Price. The words sounded clinical. The impact was not. The prosecution began with pattern. Kimberly Tran walked the jury through timelines, employment records from Little Pines Learning Center, temperature logs from January 2016. The maintenance room had no heat source. The outside temperature that day had been 9 degrees. Then came the footage. The screen in the courtroom flickered to life. Grainy black and white hallway, a timestamp in the corner reading 01/12/2016. Samantha entered the frame, holding a small hand. Madison's face was not clearly visible, just the outline of a child following an adult who did not hesitate. They moved down the hallway. Samantha opened a door. The child went inside. Samantha stepped out. The door closed. No sound, no raised voice, just the click of a latch. In the courtroom, the silence was thick enough to feel. Daniel's jaw tightened beside me. His fingers curled into fists on his lap. The defense attorney rose when it was his turn, a man in his late 50s, confident, practiced. "Mrs. Whitmore," he began when I took the stand, "you and Miss Hayes had ongoing disagreements about parenting, correct?" "Yes." "You were arguing the night of February 17th, weren't you?" I met his gaze. "I asked her not to yell at my son." "So you were arguing." "I was setting a boundary." A murmur moved faintly through the courtroom before the judge quieted it. The attorney paced slightly. "And you claim she locked you outside for 38 minutes. The police body cam footage confirms the timeline." He shifted tactics. "Isn't it true that you were frustrated living in her home?" "Yes." "And isn't it possible that this was an exaggerated family conflict that escalated?" I felt the memory of the wind on my face. "It was 3 degrees outside," I said evenly. "My 8-year-old son was in pajamas and socks." The attorney tilted his head. "She opened the door eventually, did she not?" "Yes." "So she did not intend harm." I held his gaze. "She intended fear." He paused. "Fear is not the same as physical injury. It is when you weaponize it against a child." The courtroom went still again. Kimberly Tran called Officer Chloe Park next. She described the sock prints in the snow, the position of the sliding door, the temperature reading from her patrol car dashboard. Officer Grant Miller testified about running Samantha's identification and the system flagging an active warrant. Then came the audio. Detective Vega explained how the device had been recovered from archived evidence tied to the Vacare closure, a small pink recorder shaped like a cartoon character, data preserved by a third-party storage company when the facility liquidated equipment in 2018. The file had not been reviewed in the original investigation. The courtroom lights dimmed slightly. A faint crackle filled the room. Wind. A small voice, shaky. "Mama?" A pause, breathing. "It's cold." The words were thin, almost swallowed by static. "Miss Sam." The audio cut. That was all. No dramatic confession, no cinematic moment, just a child alone in the cold. I heard someone in the gallery inhale sharply.
Daniel shifted beside me. I did not look at him. I did not trust what I might see in his face. The defense tried again. Audio can be misinterpreted. Children can exaggerate. A maintenance room may feel cold, but
Chapter 6. The door locks from the inside. It felt like the end of something I had once believed was permanent. We did not go back to the condo after the sentencing. Daniel handled the last of the paperwork with the landlord and packed what little we had left there. By December of 2024, Noah and I were loading boxes into a rented truck headed south to Naperville, Illinois. The move was quiet. No dramatic speeches, no slammed doors, just logistics and signatures. Naperville was not a place I had grown up in. It was not tied to any memory except the one we were trying to build. A small 2-bedroom apartment near a park, 3rd floor, but this time with a standard door and no balcony. I had checked that twice before signing the lease. Noah chose the bedroom facing the trees. He said he liked that he could see branches instead of parking lots. Daniel came down for the weekend to help us unload. We moved carefully around each other like people who had once known every inch of the same house and were now navigating a new map. We sat on the floor that first night, eating takeout from cardboard containers. "This is good," Noah said, looking around the half-furnished living room. "It feels normal." The word normal hit differently now. Daniel stayed in a nearby hotel. In January 2025, we signed the divorce papers. It was uncontested. No fight over custody, no shouting, no lawyers circling like sharks. "I won't contest custody," Daniel said quietly in the conference room when we met to finalize it. "He needs stability." "And you?" I asked. He looked down at his hands, the same way he had the night he told me he was wrong. "I need to figure out who I am without defending her." There was no anger in me when I signed my name. There was grief. But grief is not the same as regret. Noah continued therapy through the end of 2024. His therapist, Dr. Halverson, told me one afternoon that he was no longer reacting to every sliding sound in the building. "She startled less today," she said. He corrected himself when he said he was bad. That phrase had lingered for months. One evening in late November, a neighbor in the unit next door opened a patio door that scraped slightly along its track. I saw Noah freeze on the couch for half a second. Then he looked at me, took a breath, and went back to his homework. He did not ask if he was bad. He did not ask if someone was going to lock him out. By December, he was sleeping through the night. The first time I woke up at 3 in the morning and realized I had not been startled by a sound from his room, I lay there in the dark and let that quiet settle into my bones. My hand healed slower. In March 2024, weeks after the incident but before the trial concluded, the tissue on the tip of my left pinky had turned dark and unresponsive. The surgeon at Aurora explained it calmly. "We'll remove the damaged portion. You'll retain most function." I signed the consent form with my right hand. After the procedure, I stared at the shortened finger wrapped in gauze. It looked strange, slightly incomplete. Cruelty leaves receipts. The scar is small. Most people do not notice unless I point it out. I do not point it out often. News about Samantha traveled in predictable waves. Grace Fellowship removed her from the volunteer roster immediately after the charges became public. There was no dramatic expulsion, just a quiet statement about ongoing legal matters. Some members of the congregation reached out to Daniel, offering sympathy. A few reached out to me. "I had no idea," one woman said softly on the phone. I believed her. There was no mob justice, no sensational collapse, just a record in the system. 18 to 22 years in state prison, registration requirements upon release. Reality is less theatrical than revenge stories. It is slower. It requires paperwork and hearings and signatures. But it is real. One Saturday in early spring of 2025, Noah and I walked to the park near our apartment. The air was cool but not cruel. He ran ahead of me toward the swings, jacket zipped, cheeks pink from the wind. "Collie, push me higher," he called. I stood behind him, hands steady on the chains. "Higher," he laughed. I pushed. He tipped his head back, fearless.
Later that afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the trees, we climbed the stairs to our apartment. Noah went inside first, dropping his backpack near the door. I stepped in behind him and closed the door. The latch clicked. The sound echoed briefly in the quiet hallway. I stood there for a second, hands still resting on the knob. The difference between then and now was not the temperature, it was control. This door closed because I chose to close it. This space was ours. Noah ran past me toward his room, already talking about a science project to do next week. His voice carried down the short hallway, light and unburdened. I locked the deadbolt and felt the small, solid resistance as it turned into place. If someone calls cruelty discipline, where would you draw the line? Because I learned something at 3 degrees Fahrenheit. You do not negotiate with cold, and you do not negotiate with people who use fear to feel powerful. I took my hand off the lock and walked further inside, the door secure behind me, the sound of it shutting no longer a threat, but a promise.